Let's get the dang thing started.
Don't any of you have the guts to play for blood?
I'm your huckleberry. That's just my game.
We are MythVision. Welcome back to MythVision Podcast. I have Dr. Joshua Bowen joining us again today. How are you, Dr. Josh?
I'm doing okay. I always love your introductions. Big fan.
Thank you. I thought about it and I was like, okay, hold up. I misspelled genocide in the thumbnail, but I have to let everybody know, or at least give the impression that I'm not omniscient, because I really, I don't want anyone misconstruing my doctrines.
Only really nerdy people would care about that. Like, I was watching Futurama yesterday, and they had a robot bar mitzvah, and in Hebrew they had Hayom Ata Robot. So today you are a robot, and the final mem on Yom wasn't final form; it was just a regular mem, and I was like. But that's because I'm an idiot, right?
I wouldn't say it's an idiot. I would just say you're like obviously being correct. But sometimes people want to purposefully not be correct.
That's
what
right.
I did. It's obviously what
it's an Easter egg. You know what I'm saying?
I wanted to test everybody. See, I'm like God. I test everybody. This life is a test. It's all about a test. That's the whole point.
This is your stairway. You know what I mean?
Exactly. But I was thinking, why not get the I'm Your Huckleberry intro, since we're going to deal with violence and genocide, right? You wrote this book here, the first one. I've hit a few people with it. I've left the doors open with it. It's been a useful piece of weapon when I'm done reading it, because it's such a solid book. I really love the spine. I love the texture. I love how solid this hardback is. But now, you're pumping them out, baby. You got 2 out. And this is the Jericho scene of Joshua and them blowing the trumpets. The walls come crumbling down. And in this book, we're going to cover, obviously, one specific chapter, and maybe we can pick apart the book slowly over time. The goal is for everybody to actually read it, because even when we go through it, Josh, there's a lot of pericope examples we're just not going to be able to cover that you go more extensive in the book. But this is a shameless plug on saying, go grab the book. I did pin the link to Amazon to get the book at the top of the chat. It's also solid in the hardcover. Got to have the hardcover. It's
and look, don't do it for me, right? Do it for Megan, because Megan's the one that makes these things. She does all the design. She's the one that goes through and smooths out all my writing, right? She and Kip Davis really wrote this book. Let's just be honest, right?
I actually believe that. I think, I think you played obviously some role, but she was the one who was like, gosh, I got to take chicken shit and make chicken salad. This is crazy.
She's the one that's going to like Eric Klein and saying, listen, can you just say something, but just say something about it,
Yeah. Exactly. But for real, I'm excited. There's a lot of really interesting topics that you cover in this book, and I will give everybody the voice of an angel here in a minute. Go subscribe to the YouTube channel for Megan, not for Josh.
Yeah.
That will give you even more of an incentive to go subscribe. Now I'm going to start doing that. It's going to be like my joke.
She just started a new podcast, and they're like, that's right there. The second video, the Reading Party podcast, she and Lexi. And it's like, if you just want to listen to like amazing voices, like that's what you do. You just go to that podcast.
I liked her Facebook page this morning. So I got invited to like the Facebook page on the Reading Party. I was like, who is this? Oh, Megan. Okay. So
and it's a YouTube channel too, so I'm just,
Is it a whole new channel?
Yep.
Okay, hold up. We'll have to.
I think there's a link maybe to it. I'm not sure.
Yeah, let me see. YouTube channel here. What's this? Bit? Oh, it's a shorter. Wow. Okay. I did not know that. I'm going to add that. Please bear with me, everybody. I'm going to add this if I can.
Thank you, Derek.
Yeah, let me add it to the description, and then I'll add it in the chat.
And while you're doing that, like, I mean, people in the side chat are making some good points. Like, I bet this guy isn't even a real doctor. It's true, right?
Right,
It's
right.
true. It's a sham.
But we have to like pretend, right?
Yeah. Oh, I wasn't supposed to say that out loud. Damn it.
Oh, you did?
I
Oh my
wonder
God, you
if
said it.
that
No,
part
it's
of the
okay.
unfreezing process is that I have no inner monologue.
I think tribalism's still stronger than facts, so I think we'll be okay. Everybody's on our side, right? Like,
Hell yeah,
he's
hell
a
yeah.
real doctor. I do want to introduce you briefly here, real quick, to let everybody know while we have your website up as well, so people can go in the chat. digitalhammurabi.com. On his website, I'm reading, of course, his bio. For those of you who've never heard of Dr. Joshua Bowen, and trust me, we get new subscribers every day. Dr. Joshua Bowen graduated from Johns Hopkins University in 2017 with a PhD in Assyriology. He wrote his dissertation on the lamentational liturgies, if you will, of the city of Kish, and specializes in Sumerian language. This is where I can't pronounce it, so I'm going to use the acronyms. Joshua was awarded the DAAD. See how I did that there?
There you go.
And Fulbright Scholarship during the 2014-2015 academic year, allowing him to spend the year in Tübingen? How do you pronounce that?
Tübingen. Yeah.
Germany.
They were giving those things away that year, though, so they can't, like candy, you know.
Yeah.
So.
You know, you were putting your work to it. So, working with Dr. Conrad Volk on his dissertation project, as well as his PhD, Josh holds BS in religion. Are you trying to say something about religion?
I'm saying that is what everybody hears when we read the psalm. We're intentionally leaving it that way.
I mean, it's great. It's great. From Liberty University, a THM. Isn't this a theology master's?
Master of Theology, yep.
Master of Theology in the Old Testament from Capital Bible Seminary, and an MA in Near Eastern Studies from Johns Hopkins University. Prior to entering academia, Joshua was a chaplain in the U.S. Air Force, where he also gained an AA in avionics.
Which, let me tell you, I use every day. Anybody have any UHF radios that got problems with? You just come to me.
Oh, well, thank you for joining us. I want to mention, of course, I plugged this on the Patreon. I am constantly working my butt off. And I've got a lot of stuff with Paula Fredrickson coming your way. I have some interviews I did in person with James Tabor coming your way. And all of this stuff will be on the Patreon. So thanks to those who help support and keep MythVision live.
I'm a patron, so I'm just saying, like, it's worth it. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Josh. I really appreciate that. We're going to be dealing with genocide, even though I can't spell it. And I wanted to go into maybe just allowing you to say, like, what do you encounter? See, scholars oftentimes see YouTube as beneath them. Yeah. A lot of times scholars, let's be honest, they're kind of elitist in their thinking, like, oh, this is beneath, and I think they're starting to come out of that. A lot of academics are starting to go, hold on, this is important stuff that we're doing on YouTube. But we're also engaging in a world of apologetics with various weapons, if I can use the metaphor, of defending the Bible, or tools in which they're trying to defend the Bible and make the Bible not be what it originally was. They're apologetics. Can you tell us some of the arguments that you deal with genocide, and then what we're up against in this topic?
Yeah. So to sort of briefly touch on how you open that question, like, and I've experienced this recently. You're absolutely right that there are some scholars that have this, like, more elitist view, right? And what I don't think that they would think to themselves that I'm elitist. I think they would say, oh my God, like, I have so much work to do with my students and with papers for conferences and with writing my new book, you know, which is cutting edge and trying to make sure I get all the source. I don't have time to go on and answer these incredibly basic foundational questions and to argue with people about them. But you're right. Like, I think about people like Joel Baden, you know, that come on, and he's on Twitter and putting the work in, right? But I think eventually some people that are in academia start to realize, after they engage in this battle for a while, it really does feel like you're banging your head up against the wall.
Right.
Because I've gone into a room recently and someone has said, X is true in the Old Testament. And somebody else said, well, Dr. Josh, is that right? And so I took 15 minutes and explained how it wasn't right and what actually was the case, and then cited all the evidence for it. And then 2 hours later, the person is back in another room saying X is the case in the Old Testament. It's like, so I get it, right? But that's why this is, I think, it's a calling, honestly.
So you're setting the record straight. Like it's almost like having a website that just has like, all right, here are the facts. I'm tired of having to consistently explain these facts over and over because you revert back to your old apologetic ways.
Yeah.
Here's a book that like sets the record straight and lets you see what's really going on.
So like Eric Klein, who is one of the people that endorsed the book on the back, brilliant biblical scholar, archaeologist. I mean, he's super nice guy. And he opened, I think 2 years ago, he opened one of the biblical annual conferences with, an address essentially talking about how we have to do more public outreach. Scholars have to get out there and do stuff like this, right? And the thing is, I don't want to subject Eric Klein to some of the people that I have to deal with. And the reason is, like, he has so much that he's doing to try to push the field forward that having to engage with these people that are being openly antagonistic about some of the more foundational things in the field is really, really annoying. So, for example, he wrote a book in like 2008, 2009, where he talked about, it's called, and I hope I got the year right, but it's around there, but it's called From Eden to Exile. And he talks about like 6 or 7 or 8 or something different things that come up as debate topics, right? And one of them is the conquest. And so what I did is I took his methodology and I reapplied it slightly differently, but then I cited him and I cited all the other scholars that deal with the conquest, the archaeology of the conquest, and sort of distilled it down into chapter 3 of volume 2, right? It's like, all right, you want to know about the archaeology of the conquest. You want to know if the conquest happened and if archaeology backs it up, whatever. Here's who you need to read, and this is what they say about it. And now Eric Klein doesn't necessarily have to come on and deal with Christian apologists. People can go read the book, see what he says, and then just essentially just hold it up, metaphorically, and say, all right, look, fine, you're going to make that argument about Jericho, but look, here's what Eric Klein, here's what Israel Finkelstein, here's what William Deaver, here's what all these other people say about this. Like, here's Kenneth Atkinson's argument. What do you say about that? So I think that's the point, so that we can have that balance with scholars.
I really appreciate you as an academic who holds credentials writing a book, titling it, pigeonholing yourself, okay? Because most academics I talk to, atheist or not, critical theist, whatever they want to call themselves, they don't even like to use the word atheist sometimes,
right,
would never name it just flat out, like the Atheist Handbook to the Old Testament. They'd be afraid of losing, viewership or like somehow offending their scholarly friend, whatever. Yeah. And this was a bold move to start a series using that title. And I know that right there alone would, like, people are triggered by the title. But I'm just glad that you start to use it like it's not a cuss word, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And I think that's part of why I feel good about what I do online. Because I don't think I'm like this overly antagonistic atheist. And I feel like I'm in a good position to say that because, like, I was an evangelical Christian for 26 years. My wife is a Christian. She's an Anglican, right? So it's not that I have this like disdain for the divine or religion or something. I have a particular way that I interpret the data, and I think it's consistent. But what I do have a problem with, and this is sort of what this series is about, is trying to make sure that when Christian apologists, mostly fundamentalist Christian apologists, come on these, in these social media platforms and say things like, well, gay people shouldn't have rights because look at what it says here in Leviticus, or, like look at how wicked X group was, and so wiping them out, it was the right thing to do, or whatever. Slavery's okay, you name it, because they say all that shit. That people have the tools to be able to push back and say, no, you're not going to use this text and justify things like slavery because you try to like whitewash what it says back here, or you try to reinterpret. It's not the bad slavery. It's not really genocide. No, we're going to call a spade a spade. We're going to say what it is and arm people literally with the data to be able to combat these bad ideas that restrict the rights of others.
I hat off to you, nod to you. Before we continue forward, and we'll take super chat questions as we go, but I do want to first address a few things here. If there's a question, this right here, I mean, for those of you who have never seen an angel or heard one, listen to what I'm saying. When Paul said he heard and spoke or saw the Lord or whatever, listen.
If anybody's driving, like anybody's driving, just don't like he's going to put you in a trance. You know what I mean?
This is about to go down. Here we go. Let's see. Tell me actually, you know what? I did it wrong. Let me do it this way. I got to make sure the audio can come through because they got to have true salvation through hearing, not only seeing. Isn't it saying hearing the word or hearing the gospel, something like that? Where's it at here? Forgive me. Trying to find it.
And I got to tell you, while you're doing that, like Seth put in the work. Like when you get the book, like there's a lot of very complicated words in there to pronounce. He did his research.
He's a great reader.
Natural world that lies behind, allowing the reader to understand what is going on behind the scenes in the divine realm. In doing so, the reader is encouraged to hold fast to their faith, as the troubles and torments of the present time are not to last in.
Anyway, you know how I play mine? I'm not lying. My wife hates it. She's like, how do you even understand what is being said? I put it at 2.0, and this is how I get through the books quick.
Definitely, but are actually part of a larger, divinely sanctioned and controlled plan. Any persecution that besets true believers will eventually come to an end, when all wrongs will be righted. Dr. Stephen Cook
I listen
explains.
to all my books like that. Anyway,
even then, it sounds like gold. Like, how does he do that?
Listen, it's only a miracle. There's no explanation.
That's right.
And for those of you who are apologists on behalf of Seth, I nod to you.
Yeah.
Bradford Baldwin says, I have both copies on my shelf next to Harris, Hitch, Dawkins, and Russell. Well laid out, compelling. It's a reference resource and a straight good read.
Wow, that is very high praise. Thank you. That's really, really kind and generous.
Absolutely. And Bradford's back again. Was intent of the writings to record for posterity, send to congregations, record oral traditions, walk us through writing to consolidated Bible. Easy one for you.
Yeah, easy one. Hopefully that last thing was, in jest. So that's probably a whole separate video. And in fact, I'm not the one that's, the specialist in this. This is actually a great question for Joel Baden, or Conrad Schmidt or Jeffrey Stackert to walk through. But I mean, like in general, writing in the ancient world is complex. So the idea that they're writing history the way that we think of it now is just, it's not really a thing, generally speaking, at least in the periods that I'm working in the ancient Near East. So they're doing things like, if you read Sargon's 8th campaign, as he goes through each of his campaigns and records them as royal inscriptions, the next version of it, some things get sort of truncated and glossed over, some things get expanded on. So in other words, it's it's more complicated than just they're adding to it, for posterity's sake. And as far as like things like oral traditions, I wrote my dissertation on these liturgical texts and scribal exercises, and there's definitely interaction with oral tradition or oral performance, and how the written text and the oral performance sort of interact with one another. So actually in that book, which I probably have here somewhere, but I don't know where, Learning to Pray in a Dead Language, is the popular level book I wrote on that. But I talk about that sort of stuff at least a little bit. But yeah, I would. That's a great question for somebody that specializes in like Pentateuchal formation. Yeah.
By the way, just a little teaser. I'm speaking to Sima Yore. I always have a hard time pronouncing him. He's a Jewish scholar with 2 PhDs. He's a supplementary guy. And I had him listen to the 2 documentary responses by Michael Jones, and he wrote me back. And it's like, on a scale from 1 to 10, where do you rate it? And he's like, a 5 for an apologist. He's like, that wasn't bad for an apologist, but he's like, his problem, while he's being critical of the Wellhausen argument, the Wellhausen, he's trying not to have multiple authorship. And he's like, we're going to have to do an episode picking this apart. So even supplementary, documentary, I don't care, oppomentary, I don't care what you want to call yourself, the idea of multiple authorship, we got a problem. Anyway, that was just derailing us from my point. I just wanted to like point that out. We're going to do some stuff. Mr. Monster, Dr. Josh, have you ever had anyone try to debunk the Atheist Handbook to the Old Testament?
Not yet. So like some people have sort of dismissed it out of hand, and that's fine. Like this is, I don't think people understand what we're doing sometimes. So we publish these through Digital Hammurabi Press, right? It's us. We go get the ISBN numbers and we, do all the editing or pay people to do the editing. We have our own peer review process. So like volume 1 was read through by Joel Baden and Francesca Stavrakopoulou. Volume 2 was read through people like Eric Klein, Kenneth Atkinson, obviously Kip Davis, Robert Rosetko. So a lot of people read through, particularly like the Egyptological portions and the archaeological portions. One of the chapters is going to be published. Actually, the violence chapter is going to be published in an edited volume about evangelical misuse of scripture, I think probably early next year. So like it's been through its own sort of peer, but it's a popular level work. I'm not breaking new ground. That's the point. So it's not like this is something where I'm saying something new. I'm sort of just trying to pull together consensus scholarship and say, look, here's what these scholars say about it.
You're kind of doing what Bart Ehrman does with his books. He even admits, he's like, what I do is I go to all the experts in their field and what they specialize on. I grab and gather the information on the greatest top consensus positions on these things, bring them in, put them into one text and formulate a narrative for you so that you're actually enjoying what you're learning about this topic. So a lot of the stuff he didn't come up with or anything like that. He's just grabbing what is already the case. She has a good point here, Josh. There's a good point. So let's get into a few. Hold on. We got one more. Sentinel Apologetics. Rob. I always said Rob. Was it Lowe? I always said he was like the actor. Bro. Josh, would you like me to do a formal review?
You know what, man? Live your best life. You do you, boo. As I always hear the raging atheist say, you do you, boo.
Thank you for that super chat, Sentinel. Let's get into some pericope or some examples of violence or genocide coming from God, right? We'd expect this from men, obviously. In our understanding today, many Christians, and not all, but many do think like, okay, God is love, and there's no way like God would be okay with like the annihilation of men, women, and children, especially women and children. And then you look at like the flood and you go, why would he drown everybody? Right. And they're like, well, hold on. So there's like elaborate theories I've heard or hypotheses from people who go, well, actually, these were demonic sons of God that mated, and the bloodline was like, you know, like any type of thing to make an excuse that these aren't even really human. So we have an excuse for why annihilating these creatures, they're not even human at this point, or whatever, you know, they'll find, and I'm not speaking for all, but most that I hear this from is just crazy. Yeah. Tell us, what are some of the examples you go to in this chapter? Yeah. So, I mean, to say this sort of right off the bat, most of the things that are dealt with, not all, but most of the things that are dealt with in this series are coming at what I consider to be the more dangerous interpretive models of, you know,
people coming at the data points that the Hebrew Bible provides. And that is like the more leaning toward a fundamentalist evangelical approach to the text. So inerrancy, inspiration, particularly where, down to the individual morphemes, down to the letters, what that means, originals, like whatever, like that's, but the point is that when you start coming to the text and saying, well, it says here that X happened, therefore X happened. Particularly when you're leaving what most scholars and historians in the field would say happened, that's the type of Christianity that I'm sort of reacting to here. And the reason, again, I said earlier, is that seems to, in my experience, be the type of Christianity, that more fundamentalist approach that tries to restrict the rights of others. And so, okay, some of the arguments that you hear in this, are trying to respond to passages like Deuteronomy 2, Deuteronomy 7. These lots of passages in Deuteronomy that talk about this thing called the ban, right? The Hebrew word cherem, or chet resh mem, the root. It's this idea of something being set apart or dedicated to or for the use of something or someone, which is usually a deity, right? This is usually God. So something is being set apart for God's use, for Yahweh's use in many of these passages. So this happens in two different types of contexts. You have it in a cultic context, and you have it in like a wartime context. In a cultic context, this makes sense to us. Something is set apart like a sacrifice. If something is set apart for a deity, it's dedicated to him for his use. That makes sense for like the priests, whatever. But in war situations, in war contexts, which is what I deal with in the book, it's often translated, instead of put them under the ban, because that really isn't terribly explanatory. It'll say like completely exterminate them or utterly wipe them out, that type of language. And so these passages are dealing with, like in the book of Deuteronomy, what is it that the Israelites are supposed to do when they come into the land of Canaan, for example? What are they supposed to do with the Canaanites, and the Amorites, and the 7 nations that you see in the land of Canaan in general? And then what are they supposed to do with those that are around, the cities that are around them? And the commands are for violence, right? That's what they are. And so in and of itself, those are very problematic passages, because it's commanding genocide. People have this idea that genocide means that every single person has to be killed, right? That's not genocide, right? Everybody doesn't have to be killed in order for it to be genocide. Mm-hmm. But this is what's being called for here. So when you have these passages that are saying things like, go wipe out this people group, right? For whatever the reason, go wipe out this people group. This is highly problematic from our modern sensibilities. Right? So the reason this becomes a problem for Christian apologists so often is because if you've got an immutable deity, right, one that doesn't change, how is it that he's giving these commands, being this all-loving, deity, this omnibenevolent deity, and this just God? How is it that he's giving commands like this, one, to exterminate entire people groups, and two, very often with specific commands to kill innocents, mm-hmm. right? Like babies. Like, why? This is a problem. So this is where the apologetics come in.
I'll throw one at you that you mentioned in the book, if that's cool.
Of course. Yeah.
You talk about how they'll say, well, we know there are passages where God commands them to kill all the Canaanites, but then the Canaanites show up again a little later in the narrative. So obviously it's, what did you use for the term of the language? It's
hyperbole.
Hyperbole. Yeah. Yeah, and he obviously just meant like these, maybe a couple people, like a couple bad guys or something. But like, then when you get to these really bad passages where it's like, the Saul situation, which I know we'll get into, it's like you kind of, once you see what's going on there, you kind of have to look at the other passages and wonder and reflect and go like, am I bending stuff to try and like protect what's going on here? Anyway, hyperbole is a big one. Give us some examples of hyperbole that you do find in the Bible.
Yeah,
so people, people will be like, Josh doesn't think there's any hyperbole there. You know what I mean?
It's funny. One of my earliest, it might have been my earliest interviews that I did online, was on the Non Sequitur show. And this was one of the first things that I talked about. I actually made the comparison to Sennacherib, whom I talk about in the book, and how like when you hear things like, or read things in the book of Joshua, for example, particularly like chapters 9 to 12, they have a lot of commonality, seemingly with what we see in other ancient Near Eastern like war rhetoric, right? Oftentimes, I don't think it's the flex that apologists think it is, but yeah, I mean, so like this idea that there is hyperbole in ancient Near Eastern war rhetoric, I think is relatively clear. So the example that I give in the book is, Sennacherib, the Neo-Syrian king. He goes and fights against the city of Hiramu, and he talks about how he kills every single person, right? But then very shortly thereafter, he talks about how he like reorganizes the people. And you're like, wait, if you killed them all, like, how did you? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, there's not really a question about, or at least there doesn't seem to be a great deal of debate about whether there is hyperbole in the Hebrew Bible. I don't think that's really the issue. Now, I will say that, and the example that I give, or the analogy that I give sort of in the book is, I don't give Oliver, my 4-year-old, a hammer. And the reason I don't give him a hammer is because instantly everything becomes a nail, right? You don't do that. And that's what I see apologists doing. And I know I've given this example in other places, so I'm sorry about that if it's getting repetitive, but I just think it's a clear one. Hyperbole is something that in the hands of a Christian apologist, often everything becomes hyperbole, right? So it's like, oh, bad passage about hyperbole. Oh, this thing says hyperbole. It's like, yeah, okay, but can we do that? And that's sort of, I sort of attack hyperbole from two angles in the chapter. The first is to say, does this really help you? And the example that I give is, or the examples that I give are to talk about things like Sennacherib, right? If Sennacherib says, I went and fought against the city of Hiramu and killed everyone, but we know that he didn't, are you cool with it now? Like, are you cool with Sennacherib going down and attacking the city like that because he didn't kill everyone? Right. I mean,
it's like even if it is a sense of hyperbole, as your point is, like, meaning it's like a saying, like, you use the analogy to the football, right? We slaughtered that team. Now, they didn't really slaughter the team, but it's like they kicked their, man, they did better than the other team. In this case, it's like, I murdered everybody, but it's like not literally everybody, but there is a literal act of killing and murder involved. So it's like,
yeah, I mean, John Collins said it best. He did this interview on our channel. You should ask him about it because I think it was so funny. I told him about this hyperbole thing. So what's your take on this? Because he wrote that book on biblical values. And essentially he was saying, look, they killed a lot of people and they claim to kill more. I mean,
good point.
I mean, it's not good, right? Like, you can't, like, I killed everybody, but I only killed 2/3 of them, right? Or I only killed 1/3 of them. Like, who cares? Like, are you okay with it now? Is everybody like, hoorah, Sennacherib, way to go, buddy? Like, no. What? If it didn't kill anybody, this is the other thing that kills me. Sorry, just as a brief aside.
Yeah.
When people talk about, and I've read this like recently in somebody like Paul Copan, right? And I like Paul. So it's clear. Like Paul's a nice guy. I've interacted with him. But his arguments, I just think are they're just bad, right? In these areas. And one of the things that he talks about is like, well, you know, they didn't kill everybody. Look, there's this language about drive them out. So, like, yeah, okay.
Right.
I mean, have you? I know I give this example now, but like, if you've seen Lord of the Rings, right, and you see where they're driving the people of Rohan out, the orc or whatever are coming and driving out the people of Rohan, and like you see the villages in the back along the water like burning and the people running for their lives.
Right.
Is that good?
Yeah, are they like walking up with signs saying, "Permission, please, if you don't mind, would you guys excavate the area? We're supposed to drive you out of this location if that's all right."
I mean, even if they did, I mean, these people that are making this argument, let somebody come up to you and say, "We need you to leave your home now." I mean, I don't think you're going to go, "Well, they're not killing me." I mean,
yeah, like everybody was willing to go non-violently or something like.
I mean, come on, guys. Like, again, they killed a lot of people. They claim to kill more. So this is one side of this. We would not stand behind the new Assyrian kings and say, "Hurrah, you did good work there, right, for killing those people," because you didn't kill everybody. Like, nobody would do that. But we do it in the biblical text because we come to the text. Apologists come to the text with preconceived notions or conclusions. The other thing that I do is I actually look at specific passages, specific like literary units that talk about these things, that talk about violence, and say, okay, does hyperbole even work here literarily? And so the one that always stands out, and there are others, but is the 1 Samuel 15, right? And so in 1 Samuel 15, you've got Saul. Saul's being commanded, by Samuel to go and to kill all the Amalekites, right? Wipe them out. And men, women, children, like nursing babies, cattle, everything, right? So I know I've probably said this before, but like when Skylar and I had a debate with the Konechli, the father and son Konechli team, and they brought this up. Well, like it's hyperbole. That's hyperbole there, and so it's like, okay, well, what's the hyperbole, right? If indeed there's hyperbole, you should be able to identify it. So let's do it. Like, is Yahweh being hyperbolic when he tells Saul to go kill everybody? Because if he's being hyperbolic, if he's saying like, hey, go out there and slaughter the Steelers in the game, right? And the kids come back from their peewee football, game, and they haven't killed everybody on the field. And the coach says, "Why didn't you kill everyone? Why are they still alive and walking around?" The kids would say, "You certainly didn't mean to slaughter them, right? You were using a figure of speech. This is hyperbole." So could Saul have said that to Yahweh? Like, "Whoa, big guy, like you didn't mean kill them all." I mean,
like
that would be ridiculous.
Children in that passage, it's really explicitly the women and the children and everything, literally everything.
That's right.
I don't even think there's an explicit command in that passage to keep the virgins for themselves, right?
No, it's everybody.
It's everybody. Okay.
And so this is the question that you have to ask. Like, does the literary context itself allow for hyperbolic language? Well, no. Right. But this is why I would say people that are coming to the text as fundamentalists, my only goal here is to get you to take a step back from this interpretive model and say, is this really the way I should be viewing the text? Because no, like people, they'll come to me and they'll say, well, wait a minute, 2 Samuel or the end of 1 Samuel, like, the Amalekites show back up. And so that shows that they didn't kill everybody. Right. That is so that is an editorial issue. It's not a literary issue, and it's certainly not a historical issue, right? So go do some reading on the books of 1 and 2 Samuel. But the point is that if you're coming at it from this fundamentalist approach, you have to be able to defend that position of why doesn't Saul turn around and go, Yahweh, get off my back, my guy. Like you were using hyperbole. You didn't mean kill them all, right? So that you have to be able to do that in the
supposedly
context.
This is why he gets dethroned for this very thing. He didn't kill them all. Heathen Queen, thank you for the super chat. God just did a little bit of murder. More like a sprinkle of murder on the entire, is it entry or entirety, I think, probably, of humanity?
It's entree.
Entree. Psh, I'm an idiot.
I
I was testing you. I was testing you again. I test everybody with a thumbnail. Gotta test people. Thank you so much for that. Heathen Queen, she's so sarcastic. See, she's using hyperbole and sarcasm and all of this stuff all the time. So just get used to it.
Yeah, no doubt.
Sentinel Apologetics says, Josh, was it not the heinousness of the Amalekites' aggression first? Judges 3:13, 6:3-5, 33, blah, 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 pericope, that earned then the status enemy of God.
Yeah, so there again, this is coming at this from a more fundamentalist approach. And I know Rob doesn't like to hear me say that, but this is coming at the text saying we're looking at like a historically reliable text, right? So when we try to, unless what he's doing is just trying to defend the narrative, the canonical form of the narrative, to say that it's coherent. I don't think that's what he's doing, but maybe it is. But at any rate, so let's assume for a second that it's this more fundamentalist approach that, like Genesis 15, was it 15:13 or 15:16? I can never remember. I think it's 15:16. But it talks about, like, the wickedness of the Amorites is not yet full. So, like, certainly the canonical form of the text is going to try, just like it does with David, right? I mean, it's clearly against Saul in these places, right? And there's a reason, but it's very pro-David. So, like, clearly the text is doing something, but that's not really the point. The text is pro-Sennacherib, right? When it has his royal inscriptions. That doesn't mean that you just take it at face value. So this is the other thing, and actually this is a really good segue to the other thing, the other the other defense or apologetic that you get in this discussion about violence. By the way, people that want to read about violence, like, in detail, go read the late Hector Avalos. He's got a couple books at least on violence, particularly in the Hebrew Bible. Brilliant scholar, really love Hector Avalos. It's a real shame that he passed a couple years ago.
Yeah. I got some of his books back here.
Yeah, that was really real shame.
Like the Bad Jesus.
Yep.
There's all sorts of stuff.
Yeah. But he's got a whole thick volume on violence. And
is that it? The religious violence fighting?
That's one of them. There's another one, I think more recent, like a 2019. I can't remember.
Okay, sorry.
I've got it on my shelf. Yeah.
You threw me a...
No, it's worth it to show it. But the other is that they were just really, really wicked, right? Canaanites, Amorites, whatever, Amalekites, they were just really, really wicked people. So this is the problem, I think, with taking that approach. If you're only trying to do it to, like, level out or make coherent the narrative, fine. Like, I'm okay with that. I still think there are tons of problems with that, but that doesn't bother me, because that's not going to restrict the rights of others, ostensibly. But if you're trying to say no, it was perfectly justified because they actually did wipe all these people out, and it was actually okay that they did that, well, then I think you have a problem. And what I do in the narrative is try to show, or in the narrative, in the chapter, is to try to show that the same things, the same types of things, are done in other ancient Near Eastern texts, right? So the ones that I do in the chapter are to look at the Middle Assyrian and Neo-Assyrian, particularly the Middle Assyrian, though, texts there's a psalm, there's royal inscriptions, there's an actual literary text that all describe. Sorry, I've got to stop looking at the side chat because
It's okay. Yeah, stop looking.
Funny.
I think you're getting to something. You're trying to say like they are the good guys, and everyone on the outside always ends up being bad. So they have the justified by their gods to go annihilate and destroy and kill because they're violent and they're this and that.
That's right.
And that's that narrow-minded approach in the Bible kind of view where it's like my biblical account tells me the Israelites were okay for complete genocide or annihilation to keep the virgins. By the way, that was common practice. Anyway, sorry, I had to jump to a conclusion because
no, I appreciate it because that's the thing. Like, so if you read through, for example, the Tukulti Ninurta epic, you'll see that Kastiliash IV is the bad guy, right? And Tukulti Ninurta I is the good guy. And if you read through what the Assyrians were supposed to do by their divine mandate, like this is what you get. You get this. They're bad, not because they're foreigners, not because they're the other, but they're bad because they're doing wicked things. And often the thing that they're doing that's bad in their text is that they're rebelling against a vassal treaty that they've sworn an oath to, right? But the point is that they are sinful, they are bad, they are rebellious. And so not only is the king like justified in going and fighting and utilizing violence against them, it's actually praiseworthy what he's doing because he's trying to right the wrong, right? He's trying to bring everything back into balance for his deity. And so the question I think comes down to, well, are you okay with it when these, Middle Assyrian texts say that these people that, Tukulti Ninurta or this Neo-Assyrian text where Tiglath-Pileser III is doing it, are you okay with him doing that because the text says the other people are bad and rebellious and wicked and his God said, and they said, no, of course I'm not that. Well, then why are you okay with it in the Hebrew Bible? Well, because mine's the right text, right? This is true. And that is, I think, by definition, special pleading.
Right. I love the way you painted a picture there. So everybody saw, we approach this other literature and we might be more open-minded because we don't believe in those things to like go to the conclusion to find out. This leads me to my next question about this that I think is important. I wanted to get your thoughts. All of these war stories, I mean, it's pretty gory, right?
Yeah.
And as a once evangelical Christian who believed all this stuff really happened, I'm now kind of taking the scholarly approach and saying, okay, is this fan fiction for Israel? Because I definitely think a lot of this may be invented because they're seeing these large empires that are actually conquering and they got to somehow compete in their stories. Do you see a lot of these narratives as fan fiction or that they aren't historical?
Yeah, I mean, that's a very complicated question. I think probably most scholars would say that Joshua falls, the book of Joshua, falls more into that category than say something like the book of Judges. It seems like Judges is maintaining, at least to some degree, in its general, the way that it pictures early Israelite formation, seems like it paints it in a more consistent picture of what we see historically speaking or archaeologically speaking. Whereas Joshua, this whole idea of like a blitzkrieg, going into the land and destroying all these cities, like this just isn't this isn't what we see. But this slower, more piecemeal takeover that we see in Judges, where they're not actually, like that seems it's much smaller. Like this seems more to and not my area of expertise, right? I haven't written a commentary on the book of Judges or something. Right. But so Jack Sasson, I think, would actually be a really good Assyriologist to talk to about that. But or obviously Israel Finkelstein, if you can get Israel Finkelstein on here.
I've been crying for years.
It's like the white whale, you know what I mean?
He does respond to me every time, but he's always slammed. So
get him and like William Deaver.
Oh, I can't even email him. You know that it's this guy's off the grid.
Yeah, he is. It's like the Terminator. Like on Connor, you're not going to get him.
Well, I didn't want to say fan fiction as if they're writing something that they think their readers think is fiction. I'm saying like they're creating a narrative is all I'm trying to get at. And it seems like they're creating we're badass and God is on our side kind of
Yeah, I mean,
patriarchy narrative, if that
yeah,
makes sense.
I mean, I think when you have like when you have this scenario where you're trying to establish that you have a past that provides you with I don't know, the how would you say that, like the right to do what it is that you're doing. I think that this sort of formation history is a really important thing to do. And again, not my area of expertise.
Right.
Actually, you should have Mark Lucher come on. I think that would be a really interesting. I know I keep shilling for all these other scholars,
Okay.
but Mark Lucher would, I think, be a really interesting guy to have on to
Okay.
talk about this sort of thing. But certainly, when you've talked to Ron Hendel about this, this what's going on in something like the Exodus with cultural memory and trying to utilize that story or that tradition that's clearly coming down to them, at least by the 8th century, maybe a little bit earlier, whatever, like they're doing something with it. So I think you're absolutely right. These things are not neutral historical texts where they're just, here's what happened, let's put it down. Even our historical texts today aren't like that, right? But certainly theirs were not. So, yeah.
I feel like that would solve a lot of problems, though, if we figured out, like, don't take this to the bank. Like, realize that they may be making kind of a narrative that is matching the competition out there, and they want to make sure that they have some pedigree in light of warrior type, history, as well as their gods, divine rights, the whole nine. And so I think if we learn that, maybe people wouldn't take this stuff so literal, because while you're trying to show that, like, a lot of apologists who are trying to make it not say what it is or make it look kind of okay, there are some out there who literally see this as like a call. Like, for example, I imagine when crap hits the fan in the church history, all of a sudden we get kind of this divine war or like right to actually go to battle. When Jesus said, turn the other cheek, we've discovered actually God isn't always this pacifist. In fact, God is actually, for fighting for his people or his people to go and annihilate the wicked or whatever. So they take this stuff and probably run to the bank with it. Who is El Shaddai? Maybe it explains his violence. Thank you, Vesper, for the chat.
Yeah, I don't know if Vesper knows this, but it's been years since I wrote this, and I was a fundamentalist evangelical when I did, so I would be cautious of maybe some of the conclusions that I drew. But I wrote my master's thesis on what the divine name El Shaddai means. And certainly there were lots and lots of things that I did not factor in because I had that fundamentalist approach to the text, like the Ugaritic text. I wouldn't have, but so there's obviously one of the things that you see in the Hebrew Bible, and I think there are 48 occurrences of El Shaddai. Almost all of them have to do, or at least the context seem to deal with God being powerful, or being able to do that which is impossible, those sorts of things. And so there are different ways that people interpret the name Shaddai. Does it come from Shadum, like mountain? Does it come from Shad, breast? Does it come from Shadu, like demon? Does it come from Shaddad, like to destroy? So like there are lots of different ways that people have come at this. And I kind of went through those in the thesis, but again, like I wrote that before.
Do you have an opinion now? I mean,
yeah, I mean, now I haven't looked at it since then, but I mean, I can, I thought that it meant the sort of the standard, God Almighty.
Right.
Yeah, I think somebody like Albright would have said that it had to do with like God of the mountain, God of the steppe. Some people have tried to have seen it coming from Sumerian. Anyway, there's there's other stuff, but yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, I do think that at least in the canonical text, it does seem to be that this all powerful idea is coming through.
Thank you. Night Zeron. Forgive me. Is there not a distinction between Elyon, the Most High, and Yahweh, Son of the Most High, that is using violence? Deuteronomy 32:8-9.
Yeah. So again, this is something that I think Dan McClellan would be great to talk about. Obviously, Francesca Stavrakopoulou, Kip Davis obviously would have a lot to say about this, given the Dead Sea Scrolls aspect of it. But I think what most scholars would say about this is that what the Hebrew Bible is doing in its canonical form is trying to level that out and to say that there's not this distinction. But I think that it's sort of tipping the hand. Deuteronomy 32 is sort of tipping the hand to say that it probably was, right? Trying to smooth out this thing that shows the distinction. But, again, not my area of expertise. And I certainly would encourage people. And actually, I know I always plug his book, but Ted Lewis wrote his magnum opus a couple years ago now, on the origin and character of God, I think is the title. And he deals with all of this. So
Okay.
That's a good place to read.
Thank you, Knight. Heathen Queen in the hizzy. Do you think Yahweh sings "Keep the Virgins Coming," captured for the very first time, to the tune of Madonna's "Like a Virgin"?
I
Where do you come up with this?
This is one of the things that I love about Heathen Queen. Like, Jess's brain works very, very quickly, and mine does not. Right. And when my brain does work quickly, it often comes up with things that are incoherent, which is why I'm not terribly good at debating. She has the ability to say things quickly, but that are devastatingly coherent. And so, yes, I'm sure that she came up with that in a microsecond.
She's probably come up with 10 more since she super chatted it. So
watch
out.
At least.
Watch out. Assassin's Creed in here.
She does good work. She really does.
Yes, she does. Go subscribe to Heathen Queen's YouTube channel too. I was over there the other night. I couldn't pop on, wasn't dressed, but through a super chat, just got to throw, some love in there and stuff. So
yeah,
she's going into do something serious in the field, right?
Yeah. So she just got monetized. And so she had that stream. People should go look at, I was on the panel, but I would not say that I was a major participant. She had on Mark Lucher, who wrote a chapter in his 2017 publication on the Exodus. And then she had on Kara Cooney, all to talk about the Exodus. And I was very fortunate to be on that panel just to sort of participate in a limited way. But that was a great discussion that people should definitely go check out. But yes, she... I know that she's in the process of talking to scholars just in the community here. And she's been talking to Pat Lowinger about this, obviously talking to people like Mark Lucher, and but about applying to grad school to work in some sort of ancient Near Eastern context. So yeah, look for that in the future. And of course, she has that TikTok account that is incredibly popular.
Right.
If you want to see her, that's the stream right there. It was a lot of fun, and actually there was a lot of good interaction. And I think it was a very fair and balanced approach to the Exodus. One of the things that sticks out of my mind was, Dr. Cooney, she said at one point, like, you're not going to like my answer about the Exodus, but like Egyptologists, she's a brilliant Egyptologist. Like, we don't even think about the Exodus. Like, most of the time, we don't even want to.
Right.
Yeah. Anyway.
Thank you so much, Heathen Queen. I hope people go subscribe, show you some love. Sentinel Apologetics, thank you again, Rob, for that super chat. Why did Hoffner translate verse 3, go and attack Amalek, but spare both man and woman, child and infant, cattle and sheep, camels and donkeys?
Yeah, I mean, so Harry Hoffner, obviously a Hittitologist. I think if you go look at his evangelical background, like, I think this is the sort of thing that I would expect him to write. And this is a problematic passage, right? So I think coming up with, trying to understand why it is, I think the word that's there is chamad. And so, trying to understand, so you can see chamal. I just think that the question that has to be asked here is, what is the narrative requiring? And if it's not requiring it, which I think it probably is, like, what is being something like cherem, and this is why I think it's really important to establish what it means to put something under the ban. It would be totally antithetical to the idea of putting Amalek to the ban, particularly if he's at been at war with them cosmically since Exodus 17. That the idea that sorry, there are lots of things that are just sort of jumping out at me here. Like, why is it that it's bad that they spared some of the best cattle and sheep then, right? Because if they were supposed to spare them, why is anybody upset about that? But the point is here that there's something going on in the narrative that determines this. And I'm that doesn't surprise me. I guess that Hoffner would write that.
Thanks for that super chat, Rob. I appreciate it. Calanim says, Fave Scottish wee free sermon mishap, preaching Exodus and going through people groups of ites, later as shorthand referred to all those other shites.
The church that I used to pastor at, the senior pastor there, I was the associate. So I was going to school at the time, and he used to go through the seven, the Jebusites, the Amalekites, the Canaanites, the Amorites, all those ites at the end. And he would read it and he'd say the mosquito bites. Yeah, that was one of the ones that he'd put in there, the mosquito bites.
The mosquito bites.
Which I thought was, funny. But
thank you so much for the super chat and giving me a laugh. Go get Dr. Josh's book, everybody. We're moving to the next super chat, but I just want to give another shout out and let everybody know it's quite a fun read. And if you want to listen to it, which I bought the audio, of course. I was privileged enough to be able to get the paperback or the hardback, if you will, from Megan. I'm going to give Megan the credit here.
Yes, you absolutely should. Absolutely should.
But yes, this is always a good reference point. So thank you.
Thank you.
Lentutus, forgive me if I butchered that. I tested you, though, to see if you knew your own name. Is the God of the Bible God of war? And are there any parallels to other gods of war?
Yeah, I mean, certainly Yahweh is compared in several places in the text to something like Exodus 15, one of our earlier traditions. He's a warrior deity, right? This is obviously a subdiscipline in the field, looking at things like aspects of different presentations in different sources or different source material or in different editorial, whatever it is that you want to come at the text with. How different writers are approaching the divine. That's obviously something that's not my field. Again, I would recommend Ted Lewis's book, and of course, just go if you're in a hurry. Just go scroll through Dan McClellan's TikTok,
Yahweh's
right?
Divine Images book too.
Yeah, right. Obviously that too, but I mean, just like in a hurry, his TikTok account, he deals with this stuff all the time, answers these kinds of questions. So, and they're good questions. Just so that's clear.
You're fine. Yeah, and I think I was thinking of storm deity, but then again, is storm and war similar? I don't know. I don't know enough about all of this to know exactly making the case. I did, just while we're on that topic, and you brought Daniel up again, I thought it was pretty impressive in my interview with him. I didn't think he was going to think that there may be something to it, but the idea that Yahweh may have been some tribal leader in the South somewhere in the region, and then he ends up being deified after death, which is common in the ancient world. You worship your ancestors. And I said, is it possible Yahweh was a guy? And of course, Daniel was like, I wrote my dissertation actually, and I brought this up, and they were going to try and boo me off the stage about it, but I wouldn't shut that door. He said, I would not shut the door. And I told just the other night, I was with my brother-in-law in the kitchen, trying not to be too loud because my mom and my sister, they're Christians, and they get offended and stuff. And I'm like, I said, dude, imagine you are just a badass, whatever you do, right? In our family, we worship you after you're gone because it was just common to do that in the ancient world. And then people in 1,000 years or 2,000 years are like, thou shalt not use the name of Juan in vain because his name is Juan. And,
right.
And I said, imagine you being a man ended up becoming the creator of the cosmos in terms of how the evolution of it. And he was just like, I've never thought about that. And I was like, just think about it.
Right.
It's pretty interesting to think about. So anyway, sorry about that. Goose, Doc, what are your thoughts about the idea of Yahweh joking with Moses by telling him his name, I am who I am, Exodus 3:14, before giving him his real name?
I don't know. He was at the Baja Con conference. I guess that's I'm repeating Baja Con conference, but in Ontario, and we spend a lot of time together. He is very, very bright. That's just very impressive person. And he always had really good questions. And so often it was like,
yeah, like, I don't know the answer to this.
oh no, man, don't be asking me stuff like that. That ain't my field. No, but no, I think,
right.
So just so people know, like, and obviously Al does, but, you know, the name Yahweh seems to be some derivative of the Hebrew verb to be, right? So I am that I am, or I will be what I will be, or there's like a causative, you know, the potential for like a causative construction, like I will cause to be what I will cause to be, whatever. Like it's all that stuff's debated. So, you know, trying to understand exactly what it is that's going on there, what the nuance is, that's a really good question. I just have not looked into it all. I'm so sorry.
I think I've heard, and you might, me and you are both in the dark here of like being able to answer this, but I've heard the idea that like your forefathers didn't know me by this name, but now I'm going to give you this name. Is this kind of the merging of a previous deity's name, or are they kind of combining something here, trying to kind of say, well, they didn't know me by that name. Now, isn't this where that transaction happens?
Yeah, I mean, so this is a really complicated portion, is the burning bush, right? In Exodus 3. And this is from a historical redaction history of the text. This is sort of a defining moment, right? Because looking back, that's strange that Yahweh's, you know, being invoked here, yet it's appearing earlier in the text. And so this is one of the things that sort of stands out in trying to explain, trying to tie Genesis and Exodus together from an editorial perspective. Like this is an important passage in that respect. I just want to point out very quickly that Skylar Fiction appears to be in the side chat. And, you know,
you mean the Raptors here?
Yeah, I mean, he's accusing me from running away from a debate with him. But let me tell you, he's the one running because, as everybody knows, I am a master debater.
Oh, listen, right? I am too. I had to get prayed over almost every other day as a teenager going through puberty because I'm a master debater too. And, you know.
But, you know, just so everybody knows, this Friday, Skylar has recently come onto Clubhouse, and I've been on there, you know, maybe for a week, just sort of listening in. But he is going to somehow make it so that he and I are doing an AMA on Clubhouse. I don't know exactly how it works, but yes. So that should be Friday, 8 p.m. Eastern.
I just plugged his YouTube channel down in the chat. So for the 300 people watching both on Facebook and YouTube, go check him out. Go show some love to the community. I really appreciate this question. JC says, are there differences between U.S. Jewish and Christian evangelical apologetics on these Old Testament topics? Examples.
So, sorry, that was probably really loud. I don't work an awful lot in like Jewish interpretations of text. Like I will, you know, some of the early and medieval, you know, rabbinic interpretations, obviously I'll look at them and factor them in because I mean, it's really, really important. I mean, they were like marinating with the text, it seems like that's what they did. But you know, as far as in the U.S. Jewish apologetic, like I've heard Rabbi Tovia Singer, he's a rabbi, right?
Yeah.
And like I remember that's the only thing that's coming to mind is you did a video with him, an interview with him on slavery. There was some distinction, but not a lot. It felt like there were sort of some of the same apologetics that were going on. It's been a while, so I don't really remember.
I can't, and I get a lot of crap as an atheist for having Rabbi on. And I'm thinking to myself, do you know how many emails? I'm not making this up. I get a ton of emails from people who go, I'm so glad I found that guy. He helped me leave faith altogether.
Really?
Like, yeah, because he doesn't push. He is trying to debunk Christianity and like put Christianity in the spot and show how it's completely foreign to much of the earlier literature, which is his house, right? Where he's like, hey, Isaiah 53 is talking about Israel, not about this individual named Jesus, things like that, right? Which is Jewish interpretation. But like, there are a lot of people who are like, I'm thankful for Rabbi Toby Singer. He helped me like get free of the shackles of this like fundamentalist worldview of Christianity.
Yeah.
I was thinking about going to Judaism, but then I found flaws within that. They didn't go to him to find it, but he's not this aggressive, hey, since Christianity is not true, you need to become a Jew and come to the Old Testament. Like, that's not his goal, which is why I've never had an issue with sitting here trying to go, all right, Rabbi, let's pick you apart in Genesis 1 or 2, 2 creation accounts, aren't they? Like,
I feel like the Jewish people have undergone enough.
Like, I think so too. I mean, like,
I am not in a hurry to like. God.
But they're also like, I don't get the same vibe of aggression of trying to convert the world.
No.
So like, it's a whole different, it's not even on the same playing field.
No.
Seriously, I appreciate that super chat. Tux TV, I have met and had a cheer. I think they mean a beer, but anyway, cheer with Dr. Josh. Derek hasn't convinced me he exists.
I want to know who this is now.
A cheer. You don't really drink. You don't typically drink.
I did have a beer. I just don't know who this is. Tux TV.
Well, he may have met you at the Better conference.
Yeah, or Better or BajaCon.
Well, Tux is, so if you're wanting to see Tux's face, he is, I'll have to send you, Pocket Locker 86 is the YouTube channel. He does show up over there a lot. So
I do know who that is.
Jay.
I mean, I don't know him.
He still questions my existence though, because there was a video recently out. People don't think I exist. They think I'm a myth. So.
Okay, so look, I'm gonna say something, and so Jimmy, I'm so because I'm looking at him in the side chat here. I'm so sorry. I am terrible with faces, horrible with faces. Like, I'll wake up in the morning and look in the mirror, and like that sort of level, Just kidding. But no, I am really bad. So I'm sorry if I. Yeah.
Tux, thank you for that. I'll be seeing you again soon, my friend. And the myth version of me, of course, because I don't really exist. Thank you. I'm not going to spell the name out, but thank you for the super chat. Who was expected to read the Pentateuch and the other books of the Old Testament when they were first written down? Did people in Israel and Judah agree with them? Interesting question.
Yeah, definitely not my area. And I feel bad because I've said that a number of times here.
Well, isn't it assumed, I'm going to push you just a little to get your thoughts. Isn't it assumed that this literature is written typically for the priest, people in more of an elitist status?
So, yes. And so let's take something like the book of Deuteronomy, right? John Collins was on recently talking about like, what was Deuteronomy? I think he was the one talking about it. The formation of Deuteronomy, when did it come together? So that, most scholars would say, I think, that end of the 7th century, around 621, and so why is it being used? So yeah, I mean, I think that if the text is supposed to be coming out as authoritative, these are incredibly complex questions that if you're not working in it, So here's what I would recommend, though. There is a new Oxford Handbook on the Pentateuch out that was co-edited by Jeffrey Stackert and Joel Baden. If it's not on your shelf, put it on your shelf. Oxford. Like, it's a little pricey, but it's worth it, right?
And what's it called again?
It should be the Oxford Handbook of the Pentateuch, I think. You know what? I'm just going to go grab it because it's sitting right on my desk.
Please. All right. While he's gone, let's talk as much crap as we can, everybody. All right. Everybody, say something negative about Josh, and then when he gets back, we'll be positive. Actually, you got to love him for this. I know a lot of people who watch my channel want the answer, But what you'll find out, this is something from a non-expert. I don't know if I'll ever get a PhD in this. What you'll find out is the more you look into this, the more you get involved in the scholarship, the more you realize how nuanced and how sometimes there isn't really an answer like that. We could just go to a page. You have to use certain methodologies to try and understand how to answer that question. And it's not that simple. We want a yes or no, yes, he did it, no, he didn't kind of answer. And it's not easy like that sometimes. Go ahead, Josh. I was just talking crap about you, but don't worry. Okay. Handbook, the Oxford Handbook of the Pentateuch. There you go. Let me search that. I'm going to end up having to get it. Are you muted? There you go.
I did. Sorry.
You missed it. We were talking crap about you, man. You missed it. It's
No. It's but no, it's if you look at the powerhouses there.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if anybody knows who Jeffrey Stackert is, but if you don't, you need to get to know him. Up at University of Chicago. Damn. Like
wow, $115. But it's a beast.
It is pricey. But
$122 on the hardcover.
Oof.
Yeah.
Sorry.
But okay, what are we getting with that? You just to answer this.
So I'll just I'll read you. And I'm so sorry. My MS has been bad recently, so I'm having a tough time seeing. So part 1, text and early reception, right? So this is what I think deal. So the Pentateuch, 5 books, 1 canon. The text of the Pentateuch. Here's John Collins, the Pentateuch and Second Temple Judaism. The relevance of Moses traditions in the Second Temple period. The Pentateuch and the Samaritans, the Greek translation of the Pentateuch. And then there's a whole, I'll just read these because this is also the formation of the Pentateuch. So Ska has the beginnings of the critical reading of the Pentateuch. Rudolf Smith has, sorry. Okay, so Baruch Schwartz, the documentary hypothesis, Thomas Dozeman, form and tradition criticism, Reinhard Kratz, defining and identifying secondary layers. So, I mean, like it's dealing with all of this stuff. And I suspect if I look down, Jeffrey Stackert, the relationship of the legal codes. So, when I talk about things like most scholars would say that the covenant code in Exodus 21, the slave laws there are probably the earliest of the slave laws, and then Deuteronomy probably comes after that, and then Leviticus comes later. I think he's addressing those types of talking about. That's what he's talking about, is like situating the legal traditions that are in the Hebrew Bible. So
awesome. Well, it's obviously complex. There's a lot of material there to sift through, and I just put it on my recommended or my wish list. So thank you for that. Sparky Madness, good to see you, Darlene. Go Godzilla, love you, bro. So she believes in Godzilla, and I think it's just because her grandchild is a huge Godzilla fan. When she left Christianity, it was so traumatic to her. Yeah, it was like a death experience. That she said, I latched on to the fictional Godzilla because I can see Godzilla and I can believe in Godzilla. Like she has this whole thing about Godzilla that she loves. So.
That though, I don't think that the Godzillites are actually real believers, right? Because this is Satan's sort of corrupting of Raptor Jesus, right? That's what's going on here. And under his claws.
What if this is a broke off sect from the start of the Raptor Jesus, and it's just also in the same vein, and it's actually somewhat of an offshoot, but technically they're part of the same religion?
It's either that, or like Godzilla and Raptor Jesus, they are different personae, but the same hypostasis, right? Like they're the same essence, but different persons. Right.
Is it possible the hypostatic union might explain why you see the form of Godzilla and the form of Raptor from time to time to explain the differences?
That's blasphemy.
Okay. Oh, okay. How far did we want to go with this? I was willing to go all the way, man. Thank you so much. Completely off topic. Are there 2 sets of 10 commandments? Exodus 20, Exodus 34, 1 through 27. And Lentutus, forgive me for butchering your name.
So again, so the one that I always think about is in Deuteronomy. But what is it? Deuteronomy 24. Yeah, I mean, I haven't spent a lot of time looking at the editorial processes and who would say what about this. So I'm probably not in a good position, but I suspect that Stackert's chapter deals with, and I can just look real quick if that would be of interest to anybody. Obviously, interest here to the super chatter. God, I'm so sorry. My eyes are just so bad. 297. God. Because I actually think there might even be a chapter in here, an article in here on
Specifically dealing with this particular text reception, or
with the Decalogue.
Oh, okay.
Pentateuch codes. It doesn't look like he's dealing with it specifically.
There are debates about my existence in the chat, so you're gonna have to ask someone who believes I exist what the minimal facts are for my existence. But go ahead. Sorry.
You know where it probably would be, and Lentutus, if you want, email me, and I'll get you a better answer on this. There is a 2-volume 2015 publication. Brent Strawn put out an edited volume. It's the Oxford Encyclopedia of Ancient Near or Biblical Law. I suspect there's a something.
I just put your email in the chat just so you know.
Perfect. Yeah, on the Decalogue. Yeah,
cool.
So email me if you want. I'll see if I can't work some time up to do that.
Constellation Pegasus, I wanted to thank Jehovah, Hashem, Yahweh, or whatever for letting my parents die, not really knowing why. I appreciate it. It's kind of sad.
I am so sorry, Constellation Pegasus. Yeah. God. And this is such a problem, right? This is why I think people come so hard at Bart Ehrman for writing that book on the problem of evil. But I mean, this was why... Sorry. When Harry died, this is why when we came home, we had a very close friend of ours here at the house, and she was like trying to take care of things and keep things going, and she made meals for us and everything. We came back from the hospital. I remember we were just sitting at the island counter, and she said, "This just isn't fair." And that meant so much to me, because I think that so often, in an attempt to provide some sort of a salve or something, a balm to the pain, the wound that someone is suffering having lost someone, often it just comes across so hollow and empty. And when you say it's just not fair, then I think it allows for this to be. There doesn't have to be some grand design that my little boy died.
Sorry, Josh. I know it's tough, bro.
Sorry. It's just that there doesn't have to be some big plan or some God to blame for it. Anyway, sorry.
No, it's cool. I'm gonna keep moving us because I don't want to get you too emotional. I know how sensitive that is. Sparky Madness, thank you again for the super chat. I can prove he exists. Talking about a Godzilla. I get to wear cool t-shirts and comic books are easy to understand. Boom. I loved Arlene. She's got a very tough background and she's a sweetheart. She's been through it all and she survived. She's a fighter. That's awesome. So I'm going to go with Godzilla exists here. I'm not going to fight you on it.
That's the way to do it.
BNS, Old Testament equals Old Covenant, concerns only Jews.
Yeah, like this is one of the things that I think is very frustrating about utilizing Old Covenant. I mean, Old Testament. Like there's a reason that I selected it, right, as the title of the book, because Old Testament is a very Christian term, right? So it's like this is the Old Testament as opposed to the New Testament. Whereas, you tend to refer to these things more as the Hebrew Bible. And so, yeah, I think that's something that we should all bear in mind when we talk about these texts. It's like, yeah, let's make sure that we're, not just saying things like, this is a text that's just for a particular, group of believers.
Right. I mean, obviously, it is the Israelites like material or the Jewish material. So,
It's like,
yeah, it's kind of centered around them. So, yeah, 100%. Constellation Pegasus. The more I learn about religion, the more I appreciate physics and historical research and critical thinking skills. I'm lucky my love for particle physics wasn't destroyed by Watchtower. He's an ex-Jehovah's Witness. So,
oh, okay, yeah. Like,
wow.
I this is one of the things that I think is really, if you have to leave, like if you learn, like I did, certain things about the ancient Near East, and it makes you take a step back and you say, look, I just can't hold to these tenets of evangelical Christianity anymore. There's something really nice on the other side. And that is the beauty, that is the nuance of reading the Bible as an ancient Near Eastern text and just letting it be that, right?
It's fun. I swear it's actually way more interesting to me.
Like, can you imagine having to read the Epic of Gilgamesh as an evangelical
trying to
Babylonian or something, like, like trying to defend the jewel garden that he comes out of the tunnel in the race with the sun? Like, just let it be a really cool story.
Yeah, thank you, Constellation, for that. And I just noticed in the chat, JW Nomo said, Constellation Pegasus, hello, fellow XJW. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. My dad died recently from not accepting a blood transfusion.
Jeez.
This is the crap I fight against here on MythVision. So keep up the work, everybody in the chat. Keep spreading this information. Help people realize, like, anyway. Did you hear about the Christians who beheaded cartoonists?
No.
What? I've heard about Muslims doing that, but no.
Oh, wow.
Well, when they like some of the extreme forms of that are like you can't even draw a picture of Muhammad. So we're trying to also change all of that as well. It's one step at a time, but trying to do that. I don't know if that was I don't know. Be interested in a source, but I just don't. I've never heard of something like that.
Yeah.
Not in recent years. I could imagine that in the 14, 15, 1600s. Daryl Duckworth, one indulgence, please. Thank you, Daryl. There you go. I just gave it to. Did you feel the breath of life?
I'm still feeling Kenneth Copeland's blowing that COVID away. I guess it was the breath of God that he was pushing out. But
that was an epic scene. Like, COVID, be gone.
Yeah. But when they did the remix, that was the best part.
That's
right?
True.
I blow the wind of God.
Heavy metal? You talking about?
Yeah. Well, there was that one, but then there was COVID-19.
Oh,
COVID-19. COVID-19.
Absolutely. Daryl, thank you for that super chat and that indulgence. You have wings, even if you are evil. DJ, what's the most unjustifiable Bible chapter?
Ooh.
In your estimation?
Yeah, I guess it depends on what we're talking about. Like, I think Numbers 31 is rough, right? I also think Numbers 5 is rough. Like, set aside for a second the question about the abortive nature of the process and the test for the unfaithful wife. That's Sotah ritual in Numbers 5. Like, think about just what it was like in that society. Let's assume for a second that anything like the test for the unfaithful wife was actually carried out. read the chapter. And then,
Right.
holy shit, go pick up some commentaries, particularly evangelical commentaries, and read what they say about Numbers chapter 5 and the way that shit is spun.
Mm.
So if you don't know, like Numbers 5 is if a husband, believes that his wife has been unfaithful, has a suspicion, right, but doesn't have any evidence to support it. He just gets a jealous spirit, the text talks about. What's he do? I mean, well, he just pulls her up to the tabernacle, right? And says, here's the requisite offering. Do your thing. And the priest, takes dust from the floor of the tabernacle, puts it in some water. He takes and he writes a curse on a piece of paper, washes water over it, and it goes into and then she drinks it, right? And then if she's guilty, the text is, talking about how and it uses some euphemistic language there, which is a little complex, but like it probably has to do at best, if you can imagine this, it just makes her completely infertile. I mean, like sterile, right? Her womb distends. It's also quite likely just abortive in nature. But the point is, like, forget about all that. The text is explicit about this. There's if the wife is innocent, there's no punishment for the man. Like, he's humiliated her. Joel Baden has a wonderful, wonderful thread on this on Twitter that I retweeted recently. And it's just indefensible the way that women were treated. And I'm not in any way trying to come down on ancient people. That's not what I'm doing. The people that I'm coming down on are the people that are trying to utilize that ancient text to build their moral system and to do so in a way that restricts the rights of others. And again, I just can't emphasize enough, read John Collins' book on this, What Are Biblical Values? It's just such an important read. Like, women are people, guys. Like, let's just remember that, shall we? Let's be decent humans.
I was reading his, he does a lot of this on Twitter, but he actually was talking about if you're using the Bible for ethics, morals, policies, you name it, in our contemporary time, he's like, remember, these people had slaves. They were endorsing slaves. He knows what he's reading. The guy's not, he doesn't have to make up crap. He's well aware of the context. And that's what I enjoy about it. One of the things that came to mind, and I don't know why I thought Unjustifiable, I was thinking of the ugliest things. And it was when the harlot and the prophet is it the Judges passage where she is raped all night outside of
Judges 19, yeah.
Yeah, it's all night long.
The Levite.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then concubine. The next morning, he's just get up, throwing her on the back, get up, and
But she's dead. She's dead. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then he cuts her up into 12 pieces and sends her to the... it's like, Jesus Christ. Listen, this is why it frustrates me so much when people try to defend violent passages. That's not generally one that they'll try to defend, although it has its own problems, right? But there was a comment left by somebody about something that I wrote in the chapter on rape and adultery from because I have a chapter on rape and adultery in volume 2, and Daniel Block, who has this wonderful commentary, 2-volume commentary on Ezekiel. When he talks about Ezekiel 16, he does he just does apologetics. It's what he does. And I have the quote. I'll just read it just because.
Okay.
And you've probably heard me read this before, but I just think it's worth reading in this context. The chapter in Ezekiel 16 just has violence towards women, and it's Yahweh doing it. And he's doing it to Israel, who's his bride, right? And so it's a real problem because he's like doing some horrid shit
Like
to her.
abusive, physical
Yeah,
abuse.
and it's because she's cheated on him, right?
Right.
So let's just think about it. Let's sit with that for a second. So are we cool with that today? No,
Right,
of
right.
course not. I mean, you better not be, right? Anyway, but here's what he says. This is the last paragraph. In his commentary on this passage, Bloch provides a brief excursus where he seeks to defend this passage and the violent and misogynistic metaphor it utilizes. I find one section particularly disturbing, and as we close this chapter, I would like the reader to simply take it in and sit with it for a few minutes before going on to the next chapter. Christian apologists, please do better. Here's his quote. Far from Yahweh acting as an oppressive and powerful male who takes advantage of a weak and vulnerable female, Ezekiel 16 presents Yahweh as a gracious savior who lavishes his favors on this helpless infant/young woman. But she who tramples underfoot his grace may expect to experience his wrath.
I know in Hosea they do this too.
Yeah. And
God's talking about raping her in front of everybody, literally.
And I don't remember who it was at the moment. But they said Bowen has taken this out of context. And so he put the whole context. I remember saying, dude, it's exactly in context. You just put the context in there. It's exactly what he's saying. But it's because, last thing I'll say about that, it's because if you grow up in a household where if you interrupt somebody, you get punched in the nose, then you live your life thinking that it's perfectly just that if I interrupt somebody, I get punched in the nose. Right? So when you leave that house, you go off to college and somebody interrupts you, what do? You punch them in the nose. Then you end up in jail. And you're like, why am I in jail? I did the thing that I was supposed to do. He interrupted me, therefore I punched him, right? And so when Christian apologists come to the text, think about the reason that God commands these acts of genocide to be against these people groups. What's the one big thing that they do all the time? They worship the wrong God, right? They're worshiping other deities. Well, why does that deserve to be completely annihilated or at best driven off of your land? Well, because you worshiped other deities. That's the punishment for that. Well, why is that? Well, because God says so. Well, why does God say that's the punishment? Because that's what you get when you worship other gods. It's like,
right.
What? Yeah. So that's what's going on here.
Their material, you would imagine some claim to them being right and the other. But so that means that when Daniel Bloch writes this thing and he says, she who tramples underfoot his grace may expect to experience his wrath. It's like, wait, so you're okay with the metaphor of committing violence against her because she cheated on him? I mean, why is that justified? It's not justified. Right. We've come a long way. So
yeah, that's
let's
right.
not go back.
That's exactly right. We've made more progression. Thank you. Sorry.
Couple more super chats, Josh. I know you got to go and enjoy your Sunday. Limited Light, Paula White Kane is the wife of the Journey keyboardist. Paula White Kane is the wife of the Journey keyboardist. Do you know this?
No, I'm trying to put an acronym together here or something. PWC. That doesn't work. Every good boy does fine or something,
Limited, help me out. I'll try and keep an eye on what you mean here. I don't understand.
I have no idea. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, I'll keep an eye out. Constellation Pegasus, Jimmy Swaggart really never made a comeback. Christianity really forgives, huh? My uncle paid a lot of money for his study literature in the 1980s.
It's so interesting to two things stand out to me about this. One, how Christians eat their own. And I mean, again, the more fundamentalist that you get, I think the more that you see this. But the denomination that I was in, it wasn't just that if somebody screwed up, you didn't forgive them. It was like you're actively looking for things to disagree with them on so that you can ostracize them. I mean, it's crazy. So that's one of the things that stands out to me about this. But the other thing is, like, I'm trying to think of, I used to work in a jail, and there was literature that I used to use, and it was like financial. I can't remember the guy's name now. Goddard. What's his first name? Somebody help me out. But like, I think it was Goddard. Man, now I'm not sure. That doesn't sound right now that I'm saying it. Shit. But anyway, he used to have like this this financial training, but it was like he also did homeschooling materials, and like looking back on that, it was like, man, that stuff was so bad, those materials, but people paid a lot of money for them.
Thank you, Constellation.
Yeah.
Limited Light says she's in the same vein as Copeland.
Oh.
And then someone just said, or Captain Dadpool said, wasn't she Trump's spiritual advisor? And then someone said that she predicted Trump would win because of angels from Africa.
Oh, I remember. Yeah. Angels are coming from Africa now. I remember. Yeah, I can't remember that. I remember that. I didn't know her name.
I never saw it, but I heard someone was predicting something like that. There's a lot of that crap going on. Lentutus, in Isaiah 45:7, it says Yahweh is the author of good and evil. Some Christians accept the good part, but in denial of God being the author of evil.
Yeah, this is an interesting verse because I think, so when it contrasts shalom with Ra here, I think it is shalom. I know that in, I think maybe 1Q Isaiah A in the Dead Sea Scrolls, it has Tov, I think. I'd have to look at that. Sorry, shalom, like peace, whole being or well-being or whatever, wholeness. And then Ra, the opposite of that. And it's true. I don't think there's any question, particularly in that passage, that like calamity.
Right. I was thinking that
is the thing that I think that's a fine way to translate it. I don't think this is philosophical evil or something,
or like moral, like he's making you go and rape, or like, well, actually,
but I mean,
technically, if he's saying take the men or kill the men, women, and children, take the virgins, that's, but they're not seeing it as rape, I guess. But
yeah, but I mean, the bigger issue here. So like, I hear some people coming at this very hard on one side and saying like this is a philosophical thing that's going on here, and so God is the author of evil. And then other people, of course, like Christian apologists coming back, no, this is just like storms and earthquakes and this sort of thing, like calamity. And so, like that's all that's being dealt with here. And I don't think that even if that's what's being, it's probably the whole passage is about God's sovereignty, right? God, nothing is like he's the one that's bringing shit about. So I don't think it gets anybody out of the problem, because I think I don't know that it's necessarily, I know that it's debated in that passage, whether it's reacting against like Zoroastrianism or something, but it does seem to be reacting to like dualism, right? There's not this evil entity out there that's causing the bad things to happen. Nothing is escaping.
Yeah.
But I mean, Isaiah is a very, very complicated book. Actually, Kip Davis might be able to, talk about that more. I know he's done a lot of work on that of late.
And we're going to be doing something here, just to give a plug. I'm not sure when. We got to get our dates right, but we're going to be doing a cosmology show. You, me, Kip, and Aaron Adair on Mike Winger's defense of cosmology in the Bible and stuff. I don't know if you would call it a defense. I guess it is. It's just a weird kind, but we'll be playing some of those clips and tackling that topic coming up soon. I want the 324 people watching, please. This is the book we're covering. We only went into one specific chapter, right? And didn't even exhaust it because there's a lot of pericope goes into and examples. Get the book. Check out the the Handbook to the Old Testament.
And if you can't, like, I know the hardcover, it's not showing that there's a paperback version as well, which is $24.99. We try to price these things so that, oh yeah, there it is. So like we try to price the book. Obviously, all the Kindle versions of all of our books, we try to make them like base $9.99, so that if anybody needs it, they usually people can scrape together $10. If you can't, let me just say this: if you actually can't get $10 together, but you have a debate coming up, or you have a discussion, or somebody like wants to know about the tire prophecy or something, email us. I'll send you a PDF.
Yeah. So like that means, don't take advantage of this. Do the right thing here. But obviously, if you need it, he's down to help.
And actually, sorry, I just caught it in the side chat because I saw Apologia's name. Heathen Queen and Apologia are going to be doing a prophecy. He's got I don't know if it's a series, videos, where they're going to be going through like some of these kind of silly prophetic takes. And I know that she's going to have. I feel like this community is we just know what's going on. She's going to have Dan McClellan, Kip Davis, and Mark Lucher on to talk about Isaiah 53 and Psalm 22, I think. I hope I'm getting that right.
And trust me, you don't want to mess with her.
Jess is very defensive of our family. There's no question about that.
Right. Don't forget to like and subscribe, of course, to me and Dr. Josh. But get the book if you can afford it. It helps, obviously, the community. It makes them want to come back on the show here at MythVision. And subscribe to the YouTube channel for Megan. You get Josh included, but for Megan, okay.
Yeah, I mean, she's in the videos, right? She's the one doing the interviews. You want Megan. You don't want me. You get enough of me here, you know?
Dude, she's done some really good interviews. In fact, if it weren't for her, Kara Cooney, I don't know how, she hooked me up and connected me with that. And we did a great show just recently. It was phenomenal. She really blew my mind with going into Akhenaten and the Egyptian gods and the pharaohs. And anyway, there's that. Don't forget the Reading Party podcast. I added it in the description during this live stream, so you can go subscribe and join Megan's reading party. Also, their website, digitalhammurabi.com. You can go there and you can buy. They've got like all sorts of stuff. What is it that you guys have a little store? I mean, you have a lot of books, but you have a little store that you guys.
Yeah, she has an Etsy shop that the twins and our 4-year-old are making it difficult for her to really set the time aside to promote this stuff. But she has an Etsy shop where she does a lot of like cuneiform based wood. Yeah, there it is. Like, she has a laser cutter and she made all these designs herself, like made all the digital files. And so she's got like, if you look in Godless Engineer's backdrop of his videos, there's a big mask of the cedar forest creature Humbaba from the Gilgamesh epic. It's all made of wood and it's layered and it's beautiful. But
that's awesome.
Yeah, anyway.
Yeah, so you can go to the website, digitalhammurabi.com, and find all that. It could take you here, get you a t-shirt, go check it out. Check out our Patreon, help support us. Every month, I don't know if it's people are just dropping off, their financial struggles. I get it. But every month there's probably like 30 people who drop from the Patreon. And I'm just at that point where what I make through Patreon keeps me going and doing what I'm doing. So it's as little as $3 a month. And I've got a lot coming this month that I'm trying to get before I go to Israel with Paula. I did 12 videos. I just edited the first one. And then I've sent it over to have like final edits done by Gnostic informant Neil, because he helps me out. Yeah. And then that should be up on the Patreon this afternoon. The first video that I did with Paula on the historical Jesus, and there's all sorts of stuff coming. So
it really, if I could, like, again, as a patron myself, like there is a lot up there that goes up early. That it's up there really early. So if you're into seeing a bunch of those short interviews, right? That's a lot of the stuff that I see are like those little short clips.
Right.
They go up there early, and it's really nice to have that early access to stuff. So,
well, I think recently you remember I've taken 2 trips. This was out of my own funds that are due to the fact that I get the Patreon and make the money that I do to try and do this full time. I've taken 2 trips to your house when I lived in North Carolina. We went up there to Maryland, and we had, I don't know, I always exaggerate this number a little, and I don't mean to, probably 45 videos, to be fair, between you and Megan, between both trips. And I think I have about 20 videos, maybe 18, that have not been made public that are on Patreon. Trying to find that now, actually. Let me see if I can show all. Let's see if it'll actually pop it up.
Bill Goddard. Or Goddard or Gothard. Man, I think Mark probably knows since. But yeah, that's the name. He had this like if you want to, anyway, sorry.
No, you're good. I'm just showing all these unlisted. Yeah. These are the ones that are all that I did with you, right?
Yeah.
That are on Patreon, and then I'd go to the next. Where did the idea of gods come from? The world's oldest known schools in ancient Sumer. You can't handle the truth about the Bible, liberal scholar. And we talk about liberals. Dude, we get into some good stuff.
We do. Your patrons, and that's the other thing, is if you're a patron, when you, I mean, I remember like those were the people that got to ask the questions for those short videos.
That's right. That's right. And I haven't been able to, hold on, here we go. Let me see. John Collins. I've got like 7 videos with him. Yeah,
those are so
right here. If you see, there's one with Joel. I've got a bunch with Joel too. I think like 8 or 9 that I haven't made public. This one, the Son of Man will come literally. Yahweh and his wife Asherah. These are all with John Collins. The invention of the Exodus story. He tells us where he thinks it comes from. The vanity of Solomon in 2 Chronicles. The regathering in the northern kingdom of Israel. Is the book of Daniel concerned about the Davidic Messiah?
I mean, if you don't think that, $3 a month, that's not worth $3 a month. Like, come on, guys.
I mean, I do try to plug, but this month I told my wife, I'm like, every month there's like 30, 35 people that drop, and I know that people can't help it. So I have to.
Yes, of course.
I have to plug. And
no, that's what I'm saying. Like, God, this is it's worth it. Is what I'm saying. It's definitely worth it.
One more plug here, Elaine, just to show you. I got a bunch with her too. So all these are Elaine Pagels, and she's a world class. She's like a Bart Ehrman.
Yes.
In terms of like famous and known. I've got a bunch with her, all of these unlisted, and they're buried in my Patreon. If you go deep down in there, there's so much of this stuff. So Josh, I had to do that. Shameless plug.
No, it was great. Thank you. I hope the subscribers, patrons, people can do that, because it really is worth it. It really is worth it. I get alerts every time a new video comes up. So.
Oh yeah. Probably too many emails. You're like,
no, it's great. Love it.
Well, Josh, any final words to our audience? Other than obviously get the book and leave a review. Let us know
that's
what you
really
think.
important. Yeah, that's really important.
Even if it's critical, if you've got some things like good or bad, like, hey, I love this about it. Maybe I wish it was like this or whatever. I mean, anything.
Yeah.
Try and be positive only.
Yeah.
I
mean, but it is true. Like it is true. Because we publish these ourselves, this is how we make money. And so, but I am very happy if people can't afford. And I said Megan is behind me on this 100%. This is information that I think people need. And so if you actually cannot afford to grab a Kindle version or something, just email us. We'll shoot you a PDF. We'll ask you, please don't send it to anybody. But,
Josh, you're good people, man. I've met you multiple times in person, and I got to plug something about you. I've said this in passing, I think, but when I was there in person, you took me downstairs. We were checking out your gym and getting a coffee, and I saw this big Mac, and I was like, wow, I have a Mac at home. It's this little scrawny thing that can't handle my editing because I do so much. My computer can't handle it. Man, that's a great Mac. And like the first visit I did, it was like, this thing's just collecting dust and it's sitting downstairs. And then I come back the second time and I'm like, you're never using that thing. I'm wondering, how much would you guys sell that to me for? I'd love to use the Mac, because I use Mac. And you're like, all right, let me ask Megan how much we'll sell it to you for. And I was like, all right, you go upstairs, come back down. All right, let's record again. And you go, listen, Megan said we're not going to sell it to you. And I'm like, damn, that's such a nice Mac. And then you're like, we're going to give it to you. And I was just like, are you kidding me?
I'm such a dork.
No, but you got me. You got me good. And I was like, oh, they're not even willing to sell it, even though they're not using it. Well, okay, it's their Mac. It's their choice. But she gave it to me. And I was just like,
Yeah.
I called my wife right when I left there. And I was like, you just won't believe the kind of people that they are. And I mean, dude, you have been there. You want what's best for me. You have done nothing but try to help me, even encourage me and help me in tough times. In situations I don't have to bring up, but you've had my back in everything, dude.
Love you guys.
I love you too, man. I love you and Megan. I hope the best. I hope this book sells successfully. I hope more people are encouraged and wake up from the fundamentalist stuff, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So thank you. Any final words though?
Oh, I think you got one more super chat.
Did we?
Hell yeah.
Oh, okay. Thank you for catching that. I almost hit the outro. Can you bring up the contemporary English version illustrated Bible with the cosmological video coming soon? It admits the Hebrew believed in a flat earth and metal dome cosmology.
Yeah, this is I think what the thing we're going to be doing with Kip and on the cosmology, because I did a presentation recently for grief and death conference out in Portland, and it was on like conceptions of the afterlife in the ancient Near East in the Hebrew Bible. But I found it really difficult to contextualize the idea of the afterlife because of Sheol or, what's going on under the earth, this type of language, without going into some of the detail about how they just thought about how the world was structured, their cosmic geography, right? Their cosmology.
Right.
And so I think this is clear, right? The earth is a big disc, right? There's a dome over top. It's got foundations. It's got pillars and there's shit down, right? And so in the ancient Near East, the stuff that was down, there's this idea that there's another, not dome, but like an opposing thing,
underworld thingy.
Underworld, yes. But so this idea is really important, that you have a flat Earth. It's what they thought, right? And so I think that's important for people to recognize when they look at the ancient Near Eastern texts, including the Hebrew Bible. And so I think that's what we're going to go into, because I think a lot of apologists want to say, no, that's not it. Now, not all of them, obviously. I know Sentinel Apologetics that was here, he talks about this a lot, right? Because he reads people like John Walton.
And you got to give people credit too.
Yeah, absolutely.
So absolutely. I'm proud of him for being on top of that. I mean, we obviously disagree, but you got to give people credit. And I hope more Christians steer in that direction. Look at Megan. Megan edited your book. Yeah. Right. And this is the Atheist Handbook to the Old Testament. And she's a Christian. So it's you got to give her some credit. I know some Christians be like, no, she's not. She's not a true Christian.
Right. She's not a true Scotsman. Yeah.
Yeah. Are you and him okay? I mean, how are you and Kent Hovind doing since he's been living with you?
Yeah. I mean, his room is, it's a little cramped, I guess. But, I'm not really pushing a lot. I mean, I can see if he wants to come up for a second.
I don't want to take a lot of his time. I know he has a lot of bullshit to say to other people.
All right. But yeah. Hang on a second. Let me see if I can.
Okay.
Hey, Kent.
Might as well, right? I mean, it doesn't hurt to, I don't know. You understand where I'm coming from.
Yeah. Good evening, folks. Kent Hovind here. Down here, Dinosaur Adventureland. I guess I'm not there now. I guess I'm here with the Bowen. He's supposed to be some doctor, but of course he doesn't have a PhD like I do. Okay, right. So I'm here to help. Yeah, what can I do for you?
I just I kind of wanted to know what your thoughts were of the new book. I mean, I know that you said what you said about the first one, Kent, but he's kind of gone even deeper on this one. So, what are your comments?
Well, so when you talk about going deeper, I suspect that you, as a pervert, are thinking about those 14-foot whale penises. Okay, so that's what I suspect you're thinking about. Okay, but because I'm a good Christian, I'm not an atheist. I don't think about those kinds of things. Okay, but so I'm here to help. But I think Volume 2 is probably it's twice as satanic as Volume 1, which is what we would expect, coming from an atheist. But right. So I think it's probably something that you atheists would like, because you don't have any moral ultimate a grounding, for your worldview. Okay, because you believe you come from soup and water and otters. Okay, I'm here to help.
Hey, thanks, Ken. Appreciate just getting your subjective opinion here, which is probably like, actually the truth in your worldview. But hey, thanks for your time. I really appreciate it. I did want to ask you about the well penis thing, though. Like, you always blame other people and bring this up, but like, how come you constantly bring up the whale's penis?
Yeah, well, I think you heard me. You're like that godless engineer. Okay, you're a pervert, and that's why you keep bringing it up. I'm just responding to you. You're the one that brought up something about going deeper, and of course, I know what you were thinking. Okay, because you atheists are all the same. Okay, yeah, you probably think about that masturbation too, and of course, we know that that's straight from the devil. Okay. Well, look, I don't have time to sit here. I got to get back down to my room for something other than masturbation. Okay. I'm here to help.
Right. Okay. Kent, there you have it. Kent Hovind. He at least endorses that it's twice as satanic as the first book. So you got to get a copy. Josh, what's up with that guy?
I don't know. It's bozo.
He's weird.
But he's always willing to come on camera.
That's why
I got to give him that.
I got a special place in my heart for him. It's weird. I don't know. I think he thinks more about well penises than he's willing to let on,
Perhaps, just perhaps.
Just a smidge. We did get one more. Doug says Genesis 6 through 9, Genesis 18 through 19, Exodus 11 through 12, Numbers 21 2 through 3, Deuteronomy 20, 17, Joshua 6, 17, 1 Samuel 15, the God that keeps on killing.
Yeah, and I just think that if we can take, just fundamentalist evangelicals will just take a step back, right? And just say, okay, this is an ancient document, compilation of texts that are being edited and re-edited. Just take a step back from it and appreciate it as an ancient Near Eastern text. And don't come to it with these incredibly narrow, these myopic interpretive models, right? Broaden. This is one of the things that I do appreciate about like more progressive Christianity, right? Or even more progressive evangelicalism. Just take a step back from things like the dating of the book of Daniel. It doesn't have to be dated to the 6th century in order for your Christianity to be true or whatever. So anyway.
Thank you so much for that. I almost wish I could have asked Kent the super chat, but listen, it's okay. It's okay. Dr. Josh, thank you for your time. I seriously want to let you go. No more super chats, please. Thank you. Get the books. Check out 1 and 2. One is satanic and the other is double
satanic.
You want like what Job had, right? The first, Satan comes, takes his whole family, everything he owns, boils from head to toe. But if you get the second copy, right, you will double your portion, just like Job in the end.
That's right. It's the way it works.
It's the way it works.
Praise Raptor Jesus.
Hallelujah. Thank you, Dr. Josh. Never forget, we are MythVision.